It's time for This Week in WordPress, episode number 209, entitled Rude Words. It was recorded on Monday, the 16th of May, 2022. My name's Nathan Wrigley, and as always, I'm joined by some special WordPress guests. We have Remkes de Vries, we have Nat Miletic, and we also have Vito Peleg. There was a lot of WordPress news this week. Firstly, and very sincerely, a sad farewell to Justin Tadlock. He's been writing at the WP Tavern for many years, and he's decided to move on. We also talk about the block locking feature, which is going to be coming in WordPress 6.0. And then we move on to the big story of the week. Is the sky falling in? For the first time in its 19-year history, WordPress's market share has actually gone south instead of north. What does this mean? Does it mean it's all over for WordPress? Probably not, but we get into the weeds of that discussion as well. Then there's WordCamp Europe. Who's going? What are we going to make of it? Why do we go? And so on. And then last but by no means least, Nat brings us a SEO piece. It's all coming up next on This Week in WordPress. This episode of the WP Builds podcast is brought to you by GoDaddy Pro, the home of managed WordPress hosting that includes free domain, SSL, and 24/7 support. Bundle that with the Hub by GoDaddy Pro to unlock more free benefits to manage multiple sites in one place, invoice clients, and get 30% off new purchases. Find out more at go.me/WP Builds. Hello. We are on episode number 209. Ridiculous, 209 of This Week in WordPress. I am joined, as always, by some fabulous WordPress guests. Yes, nailed it. First time, got the direction right. It's Remkes. How are you doing, Remkes?
Good, sir. How are you?
I am very good. Remkes de Vries is joining us, and he is a WordPress veteran and performance specialist, scaling your WordPress plus WooCommerce sites and businesses. You've had a bit of a change lately. Do you want to get into that, or do we just leave it there?
We can get into it. Do you want to do that right now? Or
yeah, why not? Go on.
Sure. I switched from working at a hosting company back to working on my own. Rebooting my agency. Having a different focus in life again.
Yeah, nice. And you got a little bit of time to think about things, which is always a real nice thing. Yeah, that's lovely. Well, thank you for joining us.
Sure.
Am I going to get it? Yeah, look at him. There he is. Look, it's Vito. We haven't had Vito on the show I had brown hair last time Vito was on the show. How are you, Vito?
I had black hair.
Yeah. How are you doing?
I'm great. It's good to be here. Definitely been too long, man.
It really has been too long. It's an absolute pleasure to have you back. I mean, Vito's kind of all everywhere all at once. He's the co-founder and CEO of Atterim, which I think, honestly, Vito, I reckon that when you were last on this show, it was still called WP Feedback.
Probably.
I think that's entirely possible. Atterim, of course, if you don't know about it, is a centralized collaboration platform for agencies. How's all that stuff going? Is it still keeping you busy and excited?
Very busy and even more excited. We're just about to close the second year, going into our third birthday next week. And there's all kinds of really cool stuff happening for the celebration and stuff. So definitely keeps me busy.
And you've just wrapped up, I don't know how many you've done now, but the Atterim Summit, which is a sort of a side thing. How did that go?
That was brilliant. I even had Nat speaking there. He had a great session about Twitter marketing, and you were also supporting this year as well, Nathan, which I appreciate.
You're welcome.
So, it was awesome.
Oh, I'm so pleased to hear.
But I'm also glad that it's over.
Yeah.
You know how it is with this.
I do know how it is. I've got mine coming up in the near future, but anyway, we'll come to that later. And finally, joining us for the very first time, we have Nat. Now, Nat, I do apologize. I'm going to say that your surname is Nat Miletic, but I don't know because we didn't talk in advance if that's how you pronounce it. Have I got that right?
Yeah, definitely. You did.
Okay, Great. Oh, first time. Nice. Nat Miletic is the founder of Clio Websites, which is a WordPress development and marketing agency in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. What's it like over there in Calgary at the moment? I'm guessing like the snow has
Pretty
cleared and you've
nice.
got the green everywhere
It's
now.
yeah. Finally got rid of the snow, and I'm a little tired at 7 a.m. here, and
Oh,
I stayed up late watching my Calgary Flames hockey game make it through the next round of the playoffs. So I'm a little
oh.
tired.
So that's like the big thing, right? Hockey in Canada, in the
That's
same way
like
that like soccer is
that's
here.
like
Yeah.
football for you guys. Yeah. That's the big one for us. Yes.
Well, I'm glad that you managed to get to us 7 a.m. I really appreciate it. So there's our panel for today. We're going to talk about the WordPress news. There's quite a lot, actually. There's a few stories. Normally there's lots of stories, but this week there's a few stories, but we'll go deep into each one of them. Just a couple of things. If you fancy sharing this and dragging your friends in, please do that. We would love that. Go to wpbuilds.com/live. Copy and paste that URL. If you go there, you'll need to be logged into Google because it's YouTube. So it's YouTube comments. On the other hand, if you're in our Facebook group, then you need to go to this pithy URL. Easy to remember this: chat.restream.io/FB. Just rolls off the tongue. Chat.restream.io/FB.
I would record that as a soundbite and just hit play.
Yeah, it rolls off the tongue. Go there, otherwise you'll come out as some sort of anonymous person, and we'll get the generic avatar, and we won't get your name. A quick workaround is just to write your name first. If you want to do that, that will work as well. But please feel free to go and share this. We've got a few comments coming in already. Cameron Jones, he's at the opposite end of you, Nat. He's probably at like 11 at night or something like that. He joined us a few weeks ago, but his internet connection caved, so he didn't last very long, but he's coming back, which is great. Michelle Frichette's joining us from Tennessee. Hi, Michelle. Thanks for joining us. We've got Paul.
Who?
I don't know if
Paul
I
who?
want to share Paul's comments, frankly. I mean, we all know what happened between me and Paul. No, thank you, Paul. Appreciate you joining us. That's great. Rob Cairns. Rob, I think, is the most reliable. He gets the badge for attending every week. Good morning, all WordPress peeps. And Maya's responding to Paul. There we go. Elbow cough. I don't get it. Oh, my word. There's so many comments. Thank you all for looking there. And we got a comment here, which I think is something to do with sport. Courtney Robertson saying, "Let's go Rangers." Is that Nat? Do you know anything about this?
New York Rangers, yeah. I'm not a fan, but I'll keep my comments to myself.
Oh, that's brilliant. Well, we'll hide that one very quickly in that case.
That's right.
Thank you so much. Well, let's get stuck into the main event, shall we? Let's talk about a bit of WordPressy stuff. And that requires me to share my screen. And I very rarely get sad on this show, but I am officially sad. I'm sad because Justin Tadlock has decided he's going to leave WP Tavern. I will basically be unable to do this show from this week forward because more or less everything that I want to say will have dried up. Because basically Justin's been my crutch for the last 24 months or whatever it's been. I think he's more like 3 years. But in all seriousness, Justin Tadlock, he came when Jeff Chandler stepped away from the tavern, and I don't know if you guys were listening or watching, I should say, the tavern at that point and reading the articles, but he brought something completely new, which was like the developer chops. And he was able to write really long, in-depth developer-related stuff. And whilst I'm no developer, I could understand enough of it because he wrote it so well that it was of interest to me. And ever since then, it has been a deluge. He's been writing, I would imagine, on aggregate, he's probably done one every 72 hours, including the weekends. Maybe it's more like every 48 hours. He's done hundreds of pieces. I've enjoyed every single one of them. He manages to get people in the comments, and he's revived WP Tavern, in my eyes. I don't know what's going to happen to Justin in the future, but I would just like to shed a tear, a sincere tear. I'm not being sarcastic. And say, I wish you the best, Justin, whatever it is. He makes the point. I love this. Before he joined the tavern, he used to, he did a sort of degree in journalism or English, I think was the exact phrase, with a sort of journalism component. So he had the right background to do all of this. But then also his other career path was farming. And he thought seriously about going back into farming before he started at the tavern. That reawakened his interest in WordPress, and we are where we are now. So just from me, well done, Justin. Thank you so much. I've enjoyed everything that you've written. And after that, gosh, it's over to you three in any particular order to heap praise on Justin. If you don't heap praise on Justin, I'm booting you off the call. That's all I'm saying.
Well, I have a post out that says I'm not a huge fan of the tavern, but that's mostly because I'm not the audience. At least I didn't feel like I was. Having said that, I did appreciate the posts written and Justin's point of view. But I've always enjoyed Justin's writing, even at justintadlock.com. What was it?
Yeah, I can't remember what his original URL is.
Yeah, so from 2006 onwards, when he started learning, he shared everything, and I appreciate that even more than just the writing. Like the whole sharing thing he's done over more than almost 2 decades. We're closing in on, no, let's just say 15 years is amazing, and I've learned a lot from him. So
yeah, there's a lot of stuff that he wrote. I was trying to find a half decent free membership solution the other day, and his members plugin popped up. He no longer runs it. It's owned now by MemberPress, I believe, who we talked about extensively a couple of weeks ago for all sorts of reasons. But he built that, and lots and lots of stuff. But yeah, you're right. Lots of contributions to the community. He's very giving. Nat, Vito, anything on that?
Yeah, great. Like, I mean, the articles are very in depth and very well written. I hope that he's in the WordPress community for sure. It'd be a loss if he did decide to go farming.
He kind of came in pretty much when I started being a little more engaged in the community as well. So to me, it felt like he was always here. And so I really like the approach and the personal touch to the writing. It's not usually written like just a report or something. He
agreed.
shares his opinion. He shares his thoughts. It's very human driven writing, which I love. That there's a lot of personality there. I also want to point out there was a really cool tip in this article, because apparently a lot of people ask him, how do you do that? How do you write, and how do you do all those kind of things?
Oh,
So
yeah.
he suggested going into the National Novel Writing Month, or just taking that challenge, writing 50,000 words in 30 days, which seems like a
Wow.
huge challenge. But I think that's a really cool way of getting into and finding your voice.
I follow him on Facebook, and he's done it. I think this might be his third time, and every November over the last 3 times he's written a 50,000 word, basically a book.
Yeah.
And so you set yourself the challenge of however many words that is a day, but typically I think he was aiming at something like 2,000 words a day. You obviously end up at sort of roughly 60,000, and he did it. He was able to commit. I mean, 2,000 words a day is quite a lot, and he would write about how his characters were developing and how he was satisfied with the way it had gone today, and he'd come up with some new ideas. And
So
yeah,
after
he also
writing
makes
the 50,000, he wrote about writing 50,000.
yeah, that's right. And then he also talks about, what the inspiration is in terms of, how do you actually get into this? And I find it quite hard when I have to write blog posts and things, and I can sort of identify with this. He's basically just saying, just do one word at a time. Just do the first word, get started, and kind of keep going.
When I read that
completely identify.
50,000. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, just do 50,000 words,
50,000.
one after another.
I have a hard time trying to get a blog post out every month for like 2,000, 3,000 words, So it's 50,000 seems kind of.
I'm going to introduce you to Bertha AI in that case, which Vito knows all about. might help you get over that 2,000 word hump in a couple of seconds. The other thing is, and I did want to mention this actually, because I can say for 100% certain that this is true. He says right at the end of the article, there is a question that I get asked, and then he says in italics, a lot. Some of you probably already know what it is, and perhaps have asked it in some variation for yourself. And he says, does Matt dictate the content that we cover. And he says, since it's the last day on my job, I might as well let the readers have a sneak peek behind the curtain. The answer is no, he doesn't. And I all I can say, I don't know what conversations Justin's had. All I can say is, in my time doing the podcast, there has been no constraints about what I could and could not cover. Nobody's told me to do anything in particular or sort of censored me after the fact for doing it in a particular way. So I can only confirm what I know about that. It sounded like Remkus, you wanted to chip in there. You were inhaling.
Was I? No, I was going to play devil's advocate, and say that if that was the case, he wouldn't disclose it here. Not now, not ever.
Yeah.
But no, but I that's the devil's advocate. That's not my opinion. I don't think Justin is the person to even consider working for an outlet where that was the driver or the controller part of it. Like I said, the sheer knowledge Justin has shared over the period since this is probably 10 years ago, but at one point he linked to his very first forum post in wanting to demonstrate where he came from. And his very first question on the WordPress forums, which is publicly, and you can find it if you know his handle, essentially is just asking a random question you see anyone ask these days. And then from everything he learned from then, and I think this is 2006, if I remember correctly, everything he learned from then going forward, he shared. And I love that. So whatever he does next, and knowing his handle, Green Shady, it's very likely the farming will intensify. But he will be missed if that voice is no longer within the community.
Yeah, that's right. The one of the things that I really liked about his, when he did like bits and pieces that were technical, so he introduced a theme that he played with, or took a plugin to pieces and explained how it worked. I always liked the fact that he would explain it in two parts, and the first part would always be, here's how it works and here's what I like, and then he would very often move on to, and here's what they could have done better.
Yeah,
and that's the wrong way to phrase it. I think he always used phrases like, and I wish they had done this as well, and he would either point out something that he thought could have been improved about the implementation of the code or whatever it might be, but also just ideas, a suggestion for, wouldn't it be nice if you did this in the future? And I always thought that was really nice. Got a few nice comments coming in. Firstly, we got Andrew Palmer. I think Vito knows Andrew Palmer a little. He's saying, I think Justin did a phenomenal job of walking a tight line, but kept it real. He'll be missed in our bot. He may well rise again on other platforms. It's hard to say goodbye to this community. Do you know, if you read that sentence in the wrong way and put the comma in the wrong place, it really, really kind of, which is what I did. I don't know if you spotted that.
I'm not going there.
I'm not going there. Amazing technical writing, and also a tough critical note while bringing up potential solutions, says Dave Lutz. Thank you very much indeed. I've not met Dave. Very nice to make your acquaintance. I just got to go back up into the comments because there was some person that dropped in who says they're from the northeast of England, and I want to know who you are. Kane Mitchell, nice to have you from the northeast of England. Where are you in the northeast of England? I'm in the northeast of England. I'm in Scarborough, which is why it's sunny.
Look outside your window.
There's a guy called Kane out there. Yes, what's going on? Yeah, he's waving a banner. Very nice to meet you, though, Kane, and anybody else that's new. Obviously, there's a few new faces in here. That's really nice. Are we done with Justin? I hope not, but we're done with this piece, I think. So let's move on. Okie doke. Next piece. All right, I don't know whether this is useful or not. This is Justin Tadlock writing on the WP Tavern. I said I'd run out. This is probably it. He's telling us 2 days before he stepped down about a new block locking feature, which on the face of it seems really useful. The idea being that in the UI from now on, when you get 6 rolling out, there'll be an option. There'll be a little padlock icon in the block options, and you can lock it which sounds great. It sounds just like, oh, that's a really useful feature. Wouldn't it be great if we could lock our clients so they couldn't edit this piece of content? Well, hold your horses, because it kind of locks it until anybody who logs in also goes to that icon and unlocks it. So really, at the moment, it kind of feels like it's a safety harness for you yourself, to lock something that you don't want to accidentally amend. Honestly, maybe there's a scenario where you could accidentally delete something, or I don't know. I can't really see that. Or maybe it's just the building blocks for something else. The other thing is it's not nested either. So if you lock like a parent block, like a group block, it doesn't inherit, the children don't inherit that. You'd have to go and lock them all once at a time. You got the option to two options really. You can disable movement, so you can lock it in place. That's probably the more useful thing, I would have thought. And then you can prevent removal, so nobody can sort of accidentally come in and take it out. Like I say, it's pretty, I don't know how useful that is just yet, but maybe it's the beginnings of things. However, if you are a theme developer, apparently it is far more useful. You can build it in such a way that your theme could implement much more granularity and lock it down so that, I don't know, only specific roles or specific users can unlock things. It feels like, yeah, it feels like something that we should have. So I'll drop it there and open it up to you guys. Is this useful? Do you think this is a pointless introduction if it only does that right now? Or maybe it's useful to introduce it in the hope that it'll get better?
I think that it's a matter of, or generally in the WordPress project, not many features, if any, are introduced for the use of agencies and freelancers, like that relationship between the professional and the client, because the main focus is making this like a self-serving platform. In that case, I think that's really cool for someone that builds it and doesn't want someone else to play around with it or themselves. But there's definitely a room for a small plugin, and I think I even mentioned this when this first came out, that there should be a small kind of plugin that allows you to manage the permissions on the different blocks. If you can edit the text, edit the images.
Yeah,
That's still to be built, but I think there's definitely room for that in the agency space. Generally, I wouldn't expect any agency related features built into core ever. It's not the focus. It was never the focus.
so I think I think that's a very good point. I think but I kind of look at, so yes, this is a nice feature for those who actually need it, right? Whether that's an agency that just wants to sort a block, like you build your front page now in the block editor, it looks great, but you don't want them meddling with certain things. That makes sense. You can use this to sort of lock down what you need to lock down. Like for instance, if you put in a query block there and that should never change, lock that stuff down. But I have an entirely different concern, and that is we're focusing on the wrong things to add to the block editor. I think we're still, and this is kind of segueing in one of the next talking points that we'll have later on, but I think we're just focusing on the wrong things to add. Like there's so many other things that the block editor really needs in order to like Vito says, make a proper distinction between stuff that from an agency perspective is needed, stuff that from an editorial perspective is needed, stuff that is from a pure publishing perspective is needed, stuff that is needed from a perspective of just grand UX stuff. Like there's so much broken stuff in there. If you hear me slow down my words, that's because I'm filtering out the bad words and replacing them before I say them. which is not very easy for me to do if you know me in real life, but can I say shite? I can say shite, right?
That's fine. You just did.
It's better to ask for
no, it's fine.
Forgiveness than permission. But I'm seeing all these new features, and I know I'm taking it off topic, but yes, great feature, but really, can we finally start focusing on making this thing smooth?
Yeah. I think the lock feature is more like a user focused thing, because I know in the block editor working with it, you tend to kind of drag and drop things accidentally as well from time to time, and everything breaks. So I don't know if it's necessarily a obviously there's a hook for it, I guess, but I don't know if it's really a developer / agency thing or more like a user kind of experience type of thing. It's similar to Photoshop. Photoshop has something like that where you kind of lock certain objects, so when you're moving things around, you don't accidentally
That's weird.
click and
Look what
drop.
Marcus just said.
Oh, there
As
you
you
go.
were saying
Yeah,
those words,
yeah.
Marcus literally said the exact same thing. That's so curious.
Exactly.
Sorry,
So
Nat, carry
it's
on. Apologies.
I think it's similar to that, and I know personally I've dragged and dropped things in the block editor and freaking broke the entire page, not even knowing how I did it. So yeah, it's definitely needs some improvement from that side. So I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. Like, is it the thing to focus on? I don't know either. I think if we were to try to lock something down, I'm probably more inclined to use advanced custom fields or something like that, versus this thing. So I think it's more from a user kind of usability perspective. But
I don't know if this gets surfaced in the list view. The list view where you can see the stack of every single block that you've got on the page on the left-hand side. That would be quite useful to see it there, wouldn't it?
I suppose the padlock would be there as well.
That's what I mean, to see the padlock, just like you would in Photoshop, where in the layer next to the next, right, on the far right-hand side, you got the little padlock. And if you could see that this string of blocks, but also I do think it would be kind of cool if it just inherited, if the children inherited it. That just strikes me as a really...
that's an odd...
Children should always inherit stuff, yes.
Yeah, they do. They always do. And it would be, I think, quite useful to do that. Anyway, it's there. It's coming in WordPress 6.0. It's limited. It does what it says on the tin right now. Don't expect it to do much more. But as Vito said, maybe it's not supposed to be an agency feature. It's more of a sort of user-facing feature, just so that you don't accidentally trip up and delete something or move something. Curious that moving was one of the options as well. I would have just thought lock everything, but there you go. Okay, that was that. Now then, okay, I've been doing this podcast since about, I don't know, like 2001 or something. I don't know. It's a while. And ever since I started with WordPress, there's been this line graph, this little line graph, and it's user numbers and percentage of the internet using WordPress. And it always goes this way. Always goes north. It drifts occasionally very quickly. When I started with WordPress, I think it was in the 20-somethings. And I thought that was pretty amazing. I'd come from Drupal, which was on about 7% at the time, and now is on 2 or 1 or something. So it's been going in a northerly direction. Up, up, up it goes until several months ago, somebody finally said 43%. And, 50% felt like it was in sight. Now, I'm afraid, ladies and gentlemen, the game is up. WordPress is now no longer a usable system. Everybody's going to stop using it because for the first time ever, we've had a drop in the user numbers. If WordPress had a stock market price, it would be tanking right now. I'm overdoing it. It's a tiny little drop, but Yoast, he does his annual sort of market share thing, and here we go. Let's just have a look at the numbers. Is it not annual? I thought he did it every year.
No, well, he certainly does, but it's more periodically, I think.
Okay. I'll rephrase that. Periodically, Yoast does his state of the WordPress numbers, and this time it's got a different title. It says it's shrinking. By January 2022, it was 43.2%. February stayed constant. March, it stayed constant. So maybe we were already detecting that things were going in a different direction because normally it would creep up between months. Then it went down 0.2%, which is, I don't know how many websites that would be. March, 43.0. May, 42.9.
So that's actually the best remark you've made so far. We don't really know what the numbers are, because if we look at the metrics of what this is, of what the data set consists of what this actually is collected from, it's a subset of the total installations.
Isn't that the top 10,000 websites?
Yeah, some 10,000, 100,000, whatever. But whatever it is, it's always a subset. It doesn't say anything unless you have access to the WordPress.org API, and you can actually see downloads and combine that with sites installed.
Yeah, so in order to give some sort of context to this, let's see what Yoast had to say about that. So he has this paragraph underneath the numbers where he says, are we comparing apples with apples? And so he said that in previous years, the data had come from Alexa, which has been shut down. And so questions probably would have been asked, well, where's the data coming from? And as it turns out, the data, according to Yoast, is the same data because you're still able to access that data through some legacy API, which is still up and running. So he claims that the data is a direct correlation with what he was doing before and what he's doing now. So from that point of view, that's at least something, whether or not, whatever these numbers mean. But the more interesting point, and the conversation which developed almost everywhere immediately after this, was why? Let's try to figure out why this might be. And again, I'm not entirely sure how Yoast drew these conclusions, but these were the two conclusions that he drew. And I'm going to quote. He said, "It's honestly impossible to look at those numbers and not think, what's happening here? Why is that? After looking at a while, I'm coming to the conclusion that sites on Wix and Squarespace on average have improved their site speed more than WordPress sites. WordPress has a performance team now, and it has made some progress, but the reality is that it hasn't really made big strides, which in his opinion it should have done." And then the second point is WordPress's full site editing project isn't done yet. Anecdotally, more and more people have been having a hard time deciding how to build their sites on WordPress. Wix and Squarespace have simpler tools, easy to use, and as they improve their SEO tooling, there's less and less reason to switch over to WordPress.com. Basically, to sum it up, he thinks that they're being out-innovated. WordPress is being out-innovated by these proprietary platforms.
I don't know if I would call it out-innovated, because there's plenty of innovation in the block editor, but it's definitely not going fast enough, as I previously hinted to.
Yeah.
So it's too complex to start.
Yeah. We'll come to another piece by WP Johnny in a minute, which talks about that exact over complexity piece. But for now, what do you make about this? I mean, obviously, Vito, Remkus, Nat, you're all in the game of WordPress. I'm talking about WordPress all the time. It's been a very buoyant thing. In fact, I think to some extent, we've all got used to the fact that it was going to bust through the 50% thing. It was never going to turn down. And, you look at Facebook, and you look at it, had a similar tiny inflection point recently where instead of the numbers rising for the first time, the numbers dropped, and it was the tiniest of tiny things. But their stock market, I think they lost something like 20 billion within a week because the sentiment had swung against it. And I just wonder, is this a moment where we have to be cautious? Is this a moment where things might have changed? Are Wix and Squarespace and the likes of those, are they finally getting their message through? So that people, given I need a website, they're no longer front of mind. Well, everybody's got WordPress. Let's use WordPress. Are other alternatives coming to the fore, and we need to be concerned? Vito, I'm going to throw that one at you first.
So first of all, I think that we should all look for a different profession because it's over.
Right? That's right.
That's it. The party is over.
Yeah.
So when I was running the agency, I used to convince clients why they needed WordPress. So I don't think that it was, and I still think that is the case. The end consumer is not that educated as to what is or why they need this specific solution. Maybe more today than back then, but I still think that it's the same. People still considered Wix even 10 years ago or so. So that's not really the point. What I do think is that it does signal to what can become a trend. So 6 months over 16 years is not necessarily like such a major shift. But if we won't keep our eye on this as a community, as a project, nothing stops it from becoming Joomla. Really, it did happen before. It did happen with Drupal or with other platforms in the past. We've all, in our careers, we've all been through these cycles a few times before. So we just need to make sure that we are ahead of the curve which we are not at the moment. And at least in terms of the perception, even though there is a lot of innovation happening in the space, the project itself is lagging behind, and I think that it has the challenge of being this massive. It's very hard to pivot. It's very hard to innovate when you have so many websites already using the solution, and making sure that you have backward compatibility and all of those kind of things, so that you don't break anyone's website as you're trying to innovate. Also, the fact that you can't push an update, you can't force an update. So when Shopify makes a change, they made the change. It's done. Deal with it. When Facebook makes a change, it's done. Here it takes user interaction to actually implement that new change, and then there is
They actually can.
Well, they can force the entire update.
Yeah.
I don't know.
They have.
Yeah,
They have.
they
They
can,
have.
but
They have?
it's like, imagine,
But
they
they
do
won't.
it occasionally for security patches, but it's
Oh,
a
maybe
real,
for that, yes.
it's
Yeah.
Maybe
like,
for security, but not for new features.
no,
or-
that would be the
No,
way
no,
to
no, no.
that would be the way to set
So-
a fire on the WordPress.
So Matt has expressed that desire to have the version of WordPress be as irrelevant as the version of your Chrome installation.
I agree.
And I think that's a noble place to be in. But they've only, the last thing I can remember is Jetpack had a serious security flaw.
Yeah.
And then they pushed out to everyone just because
Yeah,
the risk was too great.
But we're talking about actually moving the product forward. That means that developers need to consider this. There's a whole bunch of other stuff
Yeah.
those systems don't need to deal with. So I do agree, Remkus, that it's moving very slow, and we are being left behind in terms of the technology, in terms of the user experience. That's the main challenge, in my opinion. Not so much if there's this feature or that feature, but the general user experience, the flow of getting the website up and running, that can bite us in the ass really fast.
Just install the current version, install it fresh, and just see where you are. You're in a mix between full site editing and old dashboard, and nothing makes any sense because there's beta features in your 593 whatever 5.6
Yeah, we're 5.9.3.
yeah,
right
yeah,
now.
5, yeah. So there's stuff in beta that is in production. That makes absolutely zero sense. Have you tried to add a menu?
I have. I know where you're going with this. Yeah.
GTFO.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So the overcomplicated piece we'll get to in a minute, but it is interesting. I mean, my background at university was history, and ancient history in particular. And one of the things that ancient history taught me is that, even those plucky Romans who thought they were going to be around forever, they weren't. Nothing lasts forever. And at some point, something will, Google will disappear, Facebook will disappear. No doubt at some point, WordPress will disappear. And there will be a moment looking back when you say, that was possibly the moment where it did tip. And we could see with 10 years hindsight, that was the moment. And to my mind, there is nothing to suggest that this is that moment. It's just an interesting talking point, isn't it? Because it'll happen. It's inevitable. Go back 20 years and look at, I don't know, Expression Engine. It was doing really well. And where are we now? So it's just a curious thing. And obviously, if all we've got is the numbers, one of the things that I forgot to mention that Joost actually carried on to talk about, and I should have mentioned this, I used the word out-innovated, and I simplified that a little bit. One of his things was that not only have they made it simple and easy to use on the Wix and Squarespace side, but he also said they've got really good chops when it comes to site speed and SEO.
Mm-hmm.
However, as Vito said, they're able to roll everything out to all of their users immediately, and they're getting better and better at page speed performance. And then he goes on to talk about the job of WordPress hosts. And Remkus, obviously, that was a big focus where you worked previously, was optimizing WordPress websites so that they were as lightning fast as possible.
Yeah.
So there's a bigger picture, isn't there? If you go to Wix and Squarespace, assuming they've done their job correctly, you pay your money and it does those things. Whereas on the WordPress side, you pay your money for the plugins, you pay your money for your hosting, you pay your money for your caching solution and all of that. And you kind of got to figure it out together and probably pay the developer as well. So there's so many different parts to this. And I'm sorry, Nat, we've totally excluded you from this conversation. So I'll rectify that now and just toss the microphone in your direction.
Yeah, no problem. I think it's I agree with you. It's not like sky is falling type of situation, but it is a good kind of I guess point of reflection maybe for everybody, just because obviously I think everybody touched on it. It's complicated, maybe too complicated. I know from some of the conversations I have on Twitter with people is that new people, I'm not even talking about just regular kind of small business owner who wants to create a site or somebody who wants to create a site from scratch. I'm talking about even developers that are looking to get started. It's very fragmented. Like there's so many different ways of doing it, and it seems like no way is the right way, and that's confusing. Whereas with the other platforms, you sign up and there's only one way to do it. With WordPress, there's, 5 or 10 different ways to create a website. And while that's a good thing, maybe from a flexibility perspective, or maybe for agencies or, companies or folks like us that have been working with it for years, I think for new people, it's very confusing, especially when you throw in the mix the whole hosting piece. And like I remember when I first got started on the Twitter community a couple of years ago, I was shocked how many people didn't know how to start up a new WordPress site, like how to even learn the platform, like log in, create a site, or like create a free account to play around with it, or local WP. Like nobody kind of a lot of people didn't know even how to get started. And then I said, oh, well, this is so easy. Like I can do a quick video, like 10-minute video, to show people how to get started. And then that, 10 or 5-minute video actually was 2.5 hours. And then I realized, okay, yeah, I could see, like, I do it all the time. So to me, it's a no-brainer kind of thing. But as you're trying to explain it to somebody, it's, it was very, very complicated. And I think that's probably the main thing. Another thing is that for some reason, the young people don't think WordPress is cool. So I don't know why, but it seems like, there's not a lot of, I guess, what's the word of excitement, maybe, from the younger people to get into WordPress. So there's a few factors at play, I think. I think, in my opinion, it's trying to do too many things at once, and whereas in these other platforms a little bit more focused. And Nathan, you forgot to mention also Shopify, same thing. They had a slight little drop and their share price in the toilet as well. And they're still growing. So even though they're just not growing fast enough. So
well, I mean, the idea of growth, it always is curious to me, in that, nothing can grow forever, otherwise it would consume all of us and everything.
Yeah.
So at some point it has to slow down. Maybe this is the point, maybe it's not. Maybe it'll speed up again in the next few months. I'm going to move over to the next piece, though. Please keep your comments coming in, by the way. I can see there's a lot of commentary about this, and we'll raise some of them in a minute. But there was an article which kind of went along with this. I'm sure there were hundreds of these similar articles, but I'm just going to mention this one. This is WP Johnny. Who often writes, he's good at like stirring things up, if you like. He's good at putting his own stamp on it and expressing an opinion. And his opinion essentially is that basically it's complicated. It's difficult for inexperienced users to use. It's expanded much farther than it used to be. The users typically want something. They don't want to hire a developer. They're happy to give $20 or $30 a month to a company like Wix or Squarespace, get everything done. And I love this phrase. That's how the core WordPress itself and third-party ecosystem radioactively mutated into some thousand-legged octopus. Just the idea, it is really complicated. And I read that article, and then I went back and I looked at WordPress, and I was thinking about full site editing, and I was thinking about menus, like you were saying, Remkus. And I did think, boy, I have to apply a lot of effort to get through this. I'm going to be here for quite some time.
Yeah.
Never used Wix, never used Squarespace. I have no idea what their UI looks like, but I'm guessing that over years they've made it so it's as simple as possible.
It's still not perfect either.
Not perfect.
No,
okay.
I mean, I don't think it is, but it most certainly has a lower entry.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So here's what WP Johnny says. So basically, he thinks it's overcomplicated in all the different ways. And to sum up, no wonder that WordPress is having an identity crisis and both devs and bottom users jumping ship. Devs hate the bloat and commercial grime. The users hate the complexity and confusion. We've fallen to the point where newborn devs are using WordPress not out of a personal preference, but because there's so much money in the market. And users likewise are choosing WordPress because of the number of devs and active development for it, because otherwise they'd rather choose something easier, something that doesn't have to be learned how to use.
So I think I think that there is an oversight in this idea, because basically 46% of all websites are being built by agencies, or freelancers, agencies, by professionals. Real businesses don't want to mess around with their website. That's just a fact. Like the same way that I don't want to mess around with payroll, I pay someone to do it. And so that is not going to change. Almost half of the website, and that means pretty much 150,000 websites every 24 hours are being launched by web agencies and freelancers. So that's not going to go anywhere. Even more the basic DIY type of websites, if we're looking at that percentage, I don't know if this is a proper stat, but I imagine that you have less of them on the top 10 million websites of in the world, because a website is not just about creating a website; it's about getting the website to work for you, to get the traffic, to get the to actually let it work. And if you're just going to splash a Wix website, a Squarespace website on your own, you probably don't have the know-how or the skills to get the website from that point over to the top 10 million out of more than a billion or 1.5 billion websites that are on the internet. So that is kind of, I don't think, really much relevant to this discussion. What I do find interesting with that 10 million stat that we saw in the previous article is that it means that the agencies and the freelancers are moving out. Because the top 10 again are probably not gonna be the ones that are done by people on their own. So the fact that Squarespace have gained, and I'm actually seeing this with Adarim as well. We have quite a few people that are coming expecting a Squarespace, the ability to use it on Squarespace or Duda or Webflows, as Picha mentioned here on the chat, which makes perfect sense. But while let's say 3, 4, 5 years ago, WordPress was the only go-to solution, now there's a few other places that are there in terms of developers. So I don't agree with WP Johnny's approach too much there.
Yeah, same here.
Okay. Yeah, fair play. Okay, let's just get some of the commentary in. So Andrew Palmer makes the point that 455 million websites, WordPress suggests its percentage is of that, but oftentimes it's stated as the top 10 million websites. And then maybe in reply to that, Cameron Jones, the metric looks at the top 10 million websites. It's inherently flawed as it relies more on the strength of the business the website is for than any real measure of popularity.
So this is my whole problem with the whole thing. There are key points that we can take from it. Both Nat and Vito have highlighted a couple. But the whole thing is about looking at data that we know is flawed. It is not complete. It does not paint the right picture. It is a indicator. It is not the indicator. So it is everything. This whole thing is just, it's almost just hearsay.
So I guess in agreement to you, then Peter Ingersoll would just sort of say, "Sky's not falling in. Don't worry about it." Yeah, thank you.
But what I did like about what was mentioned here as you were reading this article, Nathan, is that there is an identity crisis, and
for sure
that needs to be rectified and clarified for all of us.
Yeah, for sure. Trying to be too many things, and I posted about that on Twitter as well. It's just, and there's very interesting comments and replies to that, like, in regards to the market share. And I think, Remkus, I agree in terms of having the, good data, but this is the same data we've been tracking for a few years. So these articles that are following this market share have been using the same type of the same metrics all along, right? So we've been following the graph using the same data. So it's not like the data set changed all of a sudden. It's the same data set. But yeah, is it getting the full picture? Probably not. Or
no,
definitely not.
I would argue that as it matures, the audience changes. So that same, like essentially what Vito just said, that who that 10 million is actually changing in itself, and that skews whatever we're using as a percentage. So I'm
just going to speak to some of our guests, because it would appear that the chat on the bit that you can't see is we can all see all of your comments streaming by, and it appears that for Remkus and Nat, those comments have frozen for one reason or other. The only thing I can recommend is that you refresh the page, and I'll just drop you right back in, and me and Vito will hold the fort. We won't land back in, Vito. It'll just be me and you. It'll be hysterical. No, look.
I think I might need to refresh as well.
Well, yeah, you refresh, and Remkus can tell if it's fixed. Any more joy? I'm seeing everything coming in, so I can put things back on the screen, but hopefully
somebody needs to make a comment.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Maybe they will. I'm going to share some of those comments, though, the ones that I can see, because there are absolutely loads. This is obviously, like, whether or not it's just nonsense news, it's an interesting talking point, because I do like the idea that everything at some point has a moment of ascendancy, and then obviously there's decline. People have written whole books about such things. So where did we get to?
Thank you, Davinder.
Got to. Can't remember. There was something about Elementor here. Elementor is going in, having an all-in-one fixed solution that fixes that issue for them. It's so much easier to plan when you have cash flow.
Even though it's also WordPress, so every new Elementor cloud website is considered in part of these stats.
Well, I can't remember where I saw it. It's in one of these two articles. Apparently, the Elementor numbers continue to go up.
Yeah, continue to
was it
increase.
The Yoast one? Yeah. So I don't know what that increase was, but the Elementor share just kept going up, whereas the WordPress share.
They were saying that the Elementor or popularity is driving up the popularity of WordPress, which makes sense. And yeah, definitely the new Cloud Elementor that I tried it a few days ago does kind of install a base kind of WordPress implementation that has the background of, has a dashboard and everything like that. So so it is kind of vanilla WordPress, I would say, as well.
What if Automatic bought Elementor and just put it in, right? Like a 3 bill acquisition.
That's what they should have done instead of the block editor, in my opinion. I know it's not a popular one.
Okay, let's have a few more. Speaking to Remkus's point, this is Peter again. I think the biggest recent issue is the 2022 theme in a default install. Too much focus on FSE for the general population. Yeah, it was a curious choice, that, wasn't it? Having edit site as
That's an interesting way to describe it. Curious.
You know me. I like to tread very carefully on the middle of the wall.
I'm going to use the word again, and it was a shite decision.
I know what this episode's going to be called now. I have to give them a name.
No, but it's hurting. It is actually hurting.
Yeah. That's. You're agreeing in a sense with WP Johnny, then, aren't you? Whether it's complicated or it's just confusing. Your point is that, I guess, Remkus, maybe there's just too many new and difficult to figure out off the bat things that go with it. We'll come to a solution to that in a minute.
There is literally no flow. And every single thing you want to have implemented in your site you need to figure it out instead of it's like when you go somewhere and you see your input screen, you don't have to think about it. Excellent. That's what it should be. And
It's like
far away from it as you can possibly be.
It's like the Facebook ads platform. It's like you don't know what you're looking at.
I literally have no idea how to use that. Every time I go in, it's like there's like 14 new things, and even the old things have got new names, and I don't know what to do. It's a bit like Google Analytics. There's 4 new menus. Leave me alone. Okay, so this is an interesting point from Peacher. All about, like the cool thing. Everybody likes the cool thing. Younger people love Webflow, especially if they are designers. I confess, Peacher, I've never so much as even, I don't think, loaded up their homepage. So I don't even know really what that product is, but I see that word everywhere. And I'm presuming it's popular, easy to use, slick, marketed well, and all of that kind of stuff.
It is slick. That's the key. That's the key point there, which really makes sense, because if the target audience is designers, you want it to be slick.
Do you think, right? Never really occurred to me until just now, but do you think that the likes of us, curmudgeons that we are, do you think that we were born into an era where technology was hard? Like technology broke a lot, things had to be mended.
Curmudgeons being old guys.
Oh, yeah, basically, exactly that. Yeah, people are like, whoa, you get a bit cross about things. But, technology just broke. You expected your computer to crash quite a lot. Things needed to be fixed, updates needed to be applied, whereas the current generation, the iPhone, it just works, and you just click buttons. Everything is just simple. Look at it; it never breaks. Even if I chuck it in some water, it still keeps going. That kind of thing. So there's just this disconnect. Technology works for you as opposed to you having to tweak it and work against it. And I wonder if that's maybe why, to Peach's point, something like Webflow, if it really is slick, that's what they want.
There's plenty of products that have grown. Like exponentially, just because it looks great.
Yeah.
Like I would even argue that Flywheel hosting started because it looked great, because it was essentially created for designers.
Right.
Well, Webflow does have another advantage, which is the performance and not kind of bogging things down with a bunch of JavaScript libraries and things like that. So it is a little bit faster. So with the UI is nice. I've tried it as well. I do like the platform. The UI is really nice as well in terms of designing websites, but also at the end of it, you can export your entire code base, out of it and make modifications to it that way as well. And the other thing is that it's it's faster. Technically, it's faster because it doesn't bog you down with unnecessary things that you may or may not need. I think that's the biggest kind of advantage of it right now.
Can one of you three, or all three of you, just out of interest, just as a totally crude metric, just go to the WordCamp EU website and look at the attendees list and just quickly scan the pictures and see if anybody's young. Are there any young people?
You just need to look for NFTs and stuff.
Yeah,
that's right. Yeah.
Basically, if they've got grey hair, just discount them. They don't count. I'm just wondering. And now when I go around WordCamp Europe, I know that both Remkus and Vito are going. Are you going, Nat, by any chance?
Oh, I'm not going, unfortunately. No. Yeah, it's way too far for me.
Yeah, well, I'm going to go around with that in my head now. I'm going to go around, is everybody the same age or older than me? I mean, we know that's not very likely. Look at me. But you know what I mean? I'm curious now. Peach has got that in my head. Right, staying on this very quickly, Paul Lacey. The numbers personally don't bother him. They aren't. We don't need to panic at all. But I do think it's significant as it goes in reverse.
Paul already bailed, so what does it matter?
Yeah, that's right. Nothing that he says. Honestly, that's what a curmudgeon is. Yeah. What it says to me is that the product itself is not as engaging as it was, and there's more and that's more something to be concerned about. Honestly, there are so many comments about this particular story. I don't know where to begin. And so probably I'll just raise a few quick ones. What have we got here? This is Paul again. Matt is trying to compete with Wix & Co. and the process forcing through a roadmap that doesn't beat Wix and then makes it subpar solution for building custom sites. Peter again, so much talk about WP should do this and WP should do that, but what is WordPress? Open source development developed by contributors on many levels, trying to keep millions of sites running whilst improving. I noticed that Devinder had put something in. He was replying to Todd. Tumblr. Yes, Devinder. Tumblr is a new, simpler WordPress. That's the hidden plan. There's another conspiracy theory. Tumblr is, of course, it's either owned by Automatic or Audrey Capital. I don't know which.
Automatic.
But, is it an Automatic thing? And then finally, I'll just put this one up. One issue with Webflow is similar to Elementor. Creative designers should not be let loose on the web because the result could be vanity display. That's often neither accessible or useful. Boy, I knew that one would keep us going for a little while. I feel like I need to take a cold shower and calm down. But instead of doing that,
It got you excited?
Got me fairly excited. I quite like talking about this kind of stuff. I think it's fascinating though because for such a long time that conversation has only gone in one direction. And nobody put any statistics together that felt like it was going in any other direction. So even if it's a nonsense and we're talking about something which will flip, it's just an interesting talking point.
Even if it is nonsense, if the key takeaway here is by the project leads that something really needs to happen. I see. I was
you were
buffering
thinking.
again.
I could literally see the swear words just disappearing out of your.
Oh, I'm horrible. Sorry.
No, I think it's hysterical.
No, but if the key takeaway is like, oh crap, we need to change something here, like we really need to do it now, then I'm all for whatever interpretation of that number gets you to have that change.
Yeah.
Because damn it, we need that change.
So here we are talking about it and everybody else is talking about it. And no doubt that message will have got somewhere at some point. So yeah, let's see how that goes. So this is a tiny bit of self-promotion and I apologize. The idea that it's too complicated that WP Johnny mentioned, obviously it would be nice if it was less complicated. And one of the things which may make it less complicated is if you had somewhere to go to learn things. And of course, we now have this WordPress project called the Learn Project. And it's user-created content curated by the team. You can find it at learn.wordpress.org. I believe if you go to wordpress.org, it's like the second or third menu along. It's obviously quite important now. And I had a podcast episode this week on the Tavern with Courtney Robertson, who is one of the key players putting that together. Essentially, I'm just raising it if you're interested in that, if you want to go and help people to learn about WordPress so it's less difficult. Go and have a listen, see what Courtney says and how it works, how you can get your ideas heard and help out in that regard. Okay. Right. I said I'd probably miss one out, so I am probably going to miss one out. Let's go to this one instead. WordCamp Europe is just around the corner. Remkus is going. Vito's going. I'm curious. I know Nat's not going, so you maybe, I don't know if you'll be able to participate in quite the same way. Remkus, what's your reason for going this time around? He's thinking again.
No. My mic just went. You're muted.
Okay.
So this is called the 10th WordCamp Europe. And my reason for going is to tell everyone there that no, it's the 8th.
Oh, yeah, I know where you go with this.
Yes,
COVID.
There have been 2 online events, and I don't count them. So yeah. No, all joking aside, it's the same reason as I actually started it.
Sorry, can I interrupt and just make that point? Remkus is one of the. How many of you were involved in that first one? But you were certainly one of the founders of WordCamp Europe, so that's an important thing.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. So the whole reason was to have a community event that connects, and under the umbrella of teaching and learning and all of that. But that has always been my prime reason to go, and that still is the case.
So you are not going to a particular talk. You're going just like more community than other things. Which
So
is
over
nice.
I say the last couple editions, I have maybe seen 2 talks per day. I'm mostly about the hallway track.
Yeah, that's nice. I think that's nice. Vito, what about you? You've obviously got you've got your Atarim hat on, I imagine, when you go in, hoping to meet people, meet and shake some hands and all of that kind of stuff. Is that a big bit? Or are you going to be doing like Remkus, just no talks, just hallway, schmoozing,
Well,
networking,
I
all of
have
that
to
kind
go
of
to
thing?
one talk because I'm speaking.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Oh,
So,
I actually
show
have to
up.
go. I have to go to a couple as well because it's not announced yet. But I'm emceeing one of the parts
We
of
got
the
a
day.
scoop. We
yeah.
got a scoop. Oh, that's great. So yes, I Vito. I apologise. I totally. Well, it's not that I'd forgotten. I just didn't say it. You're
So,
doing a talk. It's very much lined with your business mission, anyway, isn't it? You know how to get websites built more quickly and what have you. But
yeah.
once that talk is done, or prior to that talk, are you going to be like sitting there watching everybody else's talks, or do you see this as a great opportunity to meet new people and shake hands with those that you already know and all of that?
We're also sponsoring, so I'm gonna be at my
Nice.
booth for most of the time. Looking forward to the parties in the evenings and stuff. Last time that I was there was with you,
Yeah.
and
No,
we,
don't remember much.
yeah, during the evenings for sure. I don't remember much, and part of the mornings are also kind of wiped out. But yeah, pretty much what we did back then is gonna be what I'm gonna be focused on: meeting our users. Which, last time that I was there, we were in the 200 users. Now we're in the 7,000, and then now it's gonna be more about meeting users, meeting partners, reconnecting after a few years away with all of those, with COVID and stuff. And yeah, just partying in the evenings is gonna be like what we did, 3 to 5 parties a night. That's the goal.
I have to say, Vito, obviously I was there last year. I was recording, which is kind of why I'm going this time. I'm recording podcast episodes for the Tavern. If anybody, by the way, who's listening to this would like to become a guest on the WP Tavern podcast and you have something that you would like to share, feel free to reach out. My email address is admin@wpbuilds.com, and that'd be curious. Yeah, you know where I am. Vito will. Yeah, okay. You too. All right. And
Not interested.
yeah, I'm going to be taking my little thing. I showed this last week. Got this little fabulous recording thing,
Oh,
which
nice.
will be nice. And that's kind of why I'm going to go. But obviously, there's the sort of social angle for me. I'm really, really keen to just hang out with some people who are like-minded. Where I live, lovely part of the world, but it's not like the middle of London. You know, there aren't so many technical things going on. In fact, if I was to count the number of people who are into WordPress in my local area, it's me, I think, basically. So I'm kind of looking forward to all of that. Nat, do you ever go to these events? You off to WordCamp US?
Yeah, no, I haven't actually yet. So somebody mentioned, it was funny, I think it was Marcus. Yeah, build WordPress sites for years and never been as actively kind of engaged in the community. Honestly, 2 years ago, I didn't even know any of this stuff existed. So looking forward to go to one because I got more involved in the community, I'd say, during the pandemic. So would like to check one out for sure.
Oh yeah, it's such a nice thing. Sorry, I'm
Be careful
laughing because of Paul, Lacey.
Yeah,
He says you got Kane in your
and
local
Kane.
area. You're right, but I didn't know about Kane. Kane's obviously been just like me, thinking there's only me. So it's me and Kane taking on the world. Why should we be careful, Remkus? What?
They're addicting.
Oh, they are addicting.
They
They
are.
really are addicting. Yeah.
It's
yeah.
I've said this at many WordCamps, but you come for the software and you come home with a family.
Yeah. Oh, that's nice. A nice way of doing it.
Yeah, I can be
Just
gushy.
totally right. It's nothing to do with WordPress. More medical side of things. Does that, Vito? Are you bothered about that? You know, are you thinking there's a bit on the old COVID side that's in the
Yes.
back of my head? Yeah.
So I was at CloudFest last month, and there were loads of people that came back with COVID. And luckily, I managed to kind of avoid it, but it's definitely still a concern. I think that, and I know that the team are focused on making sure that it's going to be a safe event and everyone's going to be wearing masks inside. So it's kind of easy for a lot of us to think that it's over, but it's not, and it can still happen every day. My wife is also pregnant, so I'm kind of cautious about bringing it home and all those kind of things. Thank you.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's great news. Right, you're going to stop the podcast now and talk about that. No, the thing, I did an interview with some of the organisers of this particular WordCamp, and here's a quick rundown of what's happening. If memory serves, all meals outside, all socialising outside. Come in, watch the presentation, basically go out. So everything's on the outside. You know, it's Portugal. It's fine. Run the same event here.
Obviously, gonna maintain the sponsors track kind of experience. That is something that happened in CloudFest as well, because a lot of people exactly like that just went outside, and the sponsors area was kind of empty most of the time. So hopefully that's also thought of.
Yeah. Do you know what? I didn't even ask that question when I was talking to them. That didn't really occur to me, not being an advertiser. Yeah, that would be a shame, wouldn't it? Because if it was just empty, yeah, I guess it'll be, ventilate. But take your mask, essentially. And my understanding is, as of this point, Portugal just require you to be either proof of being COVID-free or that you are inoculated, up to the whatever requirement it is in your particular country. Okay. Oh, Kane, it's just me and you. Look, no other WPPs here either. Local people I'm here just think I fix printers because I work with IT.
Yeah. We all do.
Yeah, that's funny. Kane, let's hook up. Let's go and have a beer and fix some printers together. That would be good. So that's WordCamp Europe. It's happening in a couple of weeks' time. I believe you might be able to still get tickets because the attendee list seems to be getting bigger and bigger each week. We are almost out of time. We've got a couple of minutes left. Firstly, I'll come to this one. Right, we're on the non-WordPressy stuff, if that's all right with you. There's a chap. He's very, very clever. His name is Bruce Schneier, and he does all sorts of things in the IT security space. He's an academic, and what he doesn't know about IT security, basically, I honestly think is probably not worth knowing. And he throws out articles all the time. This week, he's just caught my attention because we all are. We're all doing things like this. We're all doing live streaming, and we've got various different pieces of technology switched on. But he carried out a study and he doesn't actually go into which bits of kit he was actually testing. But you know how now you've got everything in your bedroom, you've probably got a camera in your kitchen because you've got a Zoom call and all of that kind of stuff. You're working from home and all of that. And you switch off the camera and that is pretty clearly off. Everything goes away, camera stops working. You may even go as far as clicking the mute button. Turns out you should maybe need to be a bit concerned, because having polled quite a few bits of software which claim to have switched the mic off, actually they're not. What they're actually doing is just stopping the feed from reaching the other participants of the call. So the feed is still being sucked out of your microphone. It's going to their platform. That may be a continuous stream. It may be a stream which is only on for a couple of seconds just to establish whether or not things are really happening. But that bothers me, because honestly, you've no idea how rude I am about my guests as soon as this has finished. 10 minutes from now, I'll be cursing. Oh, that Remkus, he comes on my show and he swears.
Son of a...
That's right. Son of a thing. And, but that, honestly, it sounds like a nothing, but you've got, okay, let's assume that the Google devices and the Amazon devices and the Apple devices, which are in your bedroom, let's just assume for a minute that they're playing nice. What if they're not? What if all of the stuff that you're saying in your kitchen, in your bedroom, is actually being sucked out, even though you believe you've clicked mute?
Let's not assume. Let's look at the data, because there's so many researchers have come out that it actually is storing. There's people from Amazon have come out that their literal job is to listen to stuff that's being recorded and kept on server.
I tried an experiment a little while ago, and this may be absolute rubbish, right? But I tried an experiment a little while ago where I've only got one not Amazon, I've got a Google device in the kitchen. That's the only place where Google can listen in my house. Well, I suppose my phone, but the phone was not in the space. I went into the room and I didn't trigger the keyword. I didn't say the keyword. I'm not going to say it because everybody's things will go off. I didn't do that. And then I started talking about holidays in a particular location. And blow me, guess what happened?
I don't think I need to guess.
Yeah, but I mean, and I was thinking, no, that's not right. That could be a total coincidence. Maybe I actually triggered it and I didn't realize it.
Have you searched it?
No, to be honest, I didn't go into that. I just did a quick anecdotal thing and then noticed what happened over the days to come. And it wasn't dramatic and it wasn't like I was deluged with it, but a thing which I'd previously deliberately, I chose something that I'd got no interest in. So I can't say one way or the other. Maybe I triggered something. Maybe I said that word beforehand. Maybe. I don't know. But it bothered me. And I'm a little bit more distrustful of IoT than I was in the past.
So it could be, just as well be your phone, for starters.
Yeah. Yes.
But there have been a lot of people doing various experiments like yours. And the results quite often are an increase in the particular topic in the advertisements that you see. I have done it, I have seen it, but I also see people very, very vehemently denying of its actual possibility. But I also seen whistleblowers, people who worked at those places and said, yes, we are. So I'm just I have been assuming for the last, I don't know, 4 or 5 years that they are indeed doing that. And I act accordingly.
Do you have any stuff like that in your house, you guys?
HomePods only.
Yeah. I have.
That's the Apple one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I have the Amazon one as well. I haven't noticed. I mean, I've heard anecdotally. I haven't really paid much attention to it. It's hard to say whether. I haven't done any experiments like you have, Nathan. I'd be curious to try that. But things that you are thinking about or that you want to buy or a trip you want to go to, even if you don't search for it, you might be kind of steering your website visits in that direction as well anyways. Yep. So it's kind of hard to say. It's very hard to isolate, but at the same time, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, the whole mic thing, the article was interesting because I didn't think of it that way, but I did notice some of the platforms like Zoom and I think MS Teams does give that indication, even if you're muted, is like, hey, you're muted. Like if I cough or sneeze or something, it's like, hey, you're muted. Do you want to unmute and, sneeze out loud or whatever? So I did notice that.
Oh, yeah. So
Restream did that.
It tells you that you're muted, and so it must be listening for you.
So it's listening, yeah.
We're on a platform called Restream at the moment, and Remkus, what you're saying that if you muted and then made a loud sound, Restream was able to say, "Hang on, I'm gonna write a letter."
You can try. I just clapped, and it tells you.
Oh, you see, look, I'm surveilling everybody. No, this sort of stuff really bothers me. It really, really bothers me. My attention is so easily captured. A couple of weeks ago, I mentioned a book called Lost Focus. I recommended it to Paul, actually, and he seems to be reading it at the moment. I think it's called Stolen Focus. And it's a really good read about how just little things like that can just add up to a complete lack of ability to do anything, just because you're constantly being
with the
pinged.
concept of these tools listening or stopping the feed, that makes sense because you're engaging, you're inside a conversation. So if you're muted, then you just don't want to disturb the conversation, but you're still here, you're still engaging. That makes sense because once I shut it down, then it's shut down. So with Zoom and Restream and all of those kind of services, I get it. It actually makes perfect sense. With the other tools, or this perception of Facebook listening in and Google are listening in, what really is interesting there, if you know if you dive in deep into how the advertising algorithms work, is the answer is a lot more interesting than this conspiracy. The answer is that none of us are special, and someone at your demographic in your area that has pretty similar interests to you has probably looked into something similar during this time of year in previous years. So the point is that they have so many data points collected on us that they know, because I've been on WP Build's show today, that because Remkus was on WP Builds and then straight after went to see Ariana Grande, that I'll probably be advertised with Ariana Grande ads right after
I
the
can
show.
promise you a lot of things, and one of those is that will never happen.
Neither confirm nor
Let's see if you're
deny.
going to see ads now after me saying it.
Right.
But that's basically how they find out about.
Oh yeah,
what's
for
in-
sure.
what is-
So I know examples of where somebody said I didn't look for that vacation, and then later found out yes, his wife did. Right.
Not
So
only the
Yeah.
wife, but a
yeah,
similar person at their age group in a different
absolutely,
area.
absolutely.
Do you know
So-
what's curious about that though? That on the face of it, that seems to be a really solid argument for it all being okay. But the more I think about it, that's a really solid argument for it all being not okay.
Definitely
Because
not.
if everybody can be boiled down to some sort of user profile or what have you, and I realize that there's a lot of complexity to that. I am afraid of my ability to go onto any of these platforms because I'll just buy everything. They're going to show me irresistible adverts. It's like, oh, I need that, and I want that, and I want that.
That's
and
the
now
point
I'm
of
bankrupt.
advertising. So I see this as a really positive movement in advertising. I much rather see an ad that I'm interested in than being sold something that I have no interest in at all, and it just takes my bandwidth away.
So in the locations where I cannot block, because I block everything else, in the locations where I cannot block, for instance, Instagram app on my phone, I will actively go in and say, no, I don't like this ad. Or yes, I'm seeing this too often. And the quality of ads that I do see is improving. It's an evil thing. I don't want it. I would rather just pay them a nominal fee per month, and have it solved that way. And I will never click on anything that I don't care for. But if I see something I absolutely don't care for, like I don't understand how the Instagram algorithm works for ads, because I got served lingerie. I got
You
served
see
lingerie
Ariana
for women
Grande
yesterday.
concert tickets, don't you, all the time? That's
No, I got served women's lingerie yesterday. So I showed my wife, like, were you on my account? She goes, no. Okay,
Check who
then I
you're
don't know why.
following,
Then I don't know why this is happening. But
they know your browser history.
That's right.
They don't.
Do you know what?
They don't.
I'm going to flip that, right?
Yeah.
I am going to say, and I haven't thought this through. So as the words exit my mouth, I'll probably think, you idiot. Why did you say that? I would rather have adverts that I'm not interested in, because then I'm not interested in them. Whereas
you're not gonna buy.
I'm not even going to
okay.
stop. I'm going to see adverts for like a Ferrari and be like, "Ah, you're having a laugh! I don't want a Ferrari," or Ariana Grande tickets or whatever. No, women's lingerie. No, I don't want it. Whereas if you show me like a nice, cool guitar, I'm like, oh, man alive, I'm going to dwell on that little thing. Look at that. And so I think there's maybe a merit for screwing up your ad preferences, Remkus. Go in and say, I like all the ones that you hate, and see how that works out.
So I this is conflicting, because I find that more annoying.
Yeah.
Like
You got one way or the other. You might as well have the ones you like, I guess.
Yeah. It's the one platform where I actively engage with ads, and I don't engage with ads anywhere else. Like, period. Never.
Yeah. I've got a thing called uBlock Origin in my
I've got
browser.
a thing called Brave Browser.
Yeah, I've got Brave.
Start with that, and
it's good. It's doing some weird crypto stuff, though, isn't it? They're trying to flog me a wallet.
You can ignore it.
I'm ignoring it. Yeah. Okay, right. Well, that one's done. We've solved that problem. Let's go to this last piece, which didn't come from me. This one's come. Wow. Yeah, that's right. We have solved the world's problems. That's going to be the name of this episode, with a 4-letter word beginning with S appended to the end. So, Nat, you've sent us an article. It's called Importance of Initial Ranking, Re-Ranking and Historical Data for SEO. Why did you raise this one? What piqued your interest about this week?
Oh, I've been geeking out over this blog for days and days now, and I didn't expect you to read it, Nathan, because it's probably like an ebook length type of an article. Yeah, it's just very interesting data about a case study that was done in the SEO world in terms of increasing kind of like topical relevance of websites. And I just geeked out, and then I started reading more and more from this guy Corey, and watched a few of his YouTube videos as well. And it's just mind-blowing stuff. I love charts. I love SEO. I love the technical SEO. So this to me was like, Yeah,
I'm scrolling through this article for the first time, and there are charts. There's more charts than you can shake a stick at. When I see charts like this, I usually want to saw a leg off.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, some reason charts never work for me. Whenever I was doing my GCSE maths, it was like, show me a chart. Nathan's going to fail.
It's you.
Yeah.
It's you.
But okay, well, if there's nothing really to dwell on about that one, I will simply include it in our show notes today. And obviously, it's got the recommendation of Nat. Go and check it out. A deep dive into some SEO.
Into SEO, technical SEO, content creation, and things like that. I think, for me, honestly, the WordPress platform, one of the main benefits is the SEO aspect of it, being able to create content easily, being able to use that from an SEO perspective. So if you're interested in SEO and technical SEO, do check this out. It's very interesting.
Thank you very much indeed. Well, we've hit our allotted time. There was probably more that we could have said. I feel that we could have delved into a lot of those more carefully, but
we still have 3.5 minutes.
We've still got 3.5 minutes. You could say loads of swear words in the next 3.5 minutes if you like.
You'd be surprised.
Just rattle them off.
I got 5 languages I can use. You'd be surprised.
Do you know the swear words in all the languages?
Not all the language, but quite a few.
Yeah, all the 5. Oh, that's probably
that's usually the first thing you learn.
Yeah, I was going to say all the words to. Yeah. Anyway, there we go. So thank you, Remkus. Thanks for joining us once again.
Thanks for having me.
Very nice to have you on. I hope you come on again.
Thank you.
Thanks for the return, Vito. Again, I hope that you'll come on at some point in the near future. As always, thank you for the deluge of comments. Really appreciate it. There was loads and loads coming in today. Just having read through, it appears to me that I suffered from the same problem, although it didn't look like it at the time. I think quite a few of the comments, because there's bits, people are mentioning things that don't really make any sense to me because there's no comment that it hooks up with. So apologies if I've missed something important in the comments. But right, guys, the quite humiliating moment for the 3 panelists where I get them to raise their hands and give me a wave all at the same time so that we can use, there we go. We have to just keep doing this for like 3 or 4 seconds and we're done. Thank you very much. We'll be back next week with some different guests. We're going to be later next week. I've got to go and have somebody poke around in my mouth with a big metal stick. And I can't do that whilst this is happening. So it's going to be 2 hours later. So it's going to be 4 o'clock. I could do it from the dental chair. That would be fun. Probably make as much
I don't
sense.
Hear the difference. I don't hear the difference.
Yeah, you got there before me. Darn. Okay, we'll be back next week. Take it easy, guys. Thanks very much for joining us. See you later. Bye.
Cheers.